Paris, France, January 1950, 3rd floor, door B, Rue des Rosiers. Samuel Goldstein wakes up every day at 5:30 a.m., not by choice, but because nightmares won't let him sleep longer than that. On the wall of his small apartment in the Marais, maps of France covered with red pins show every city he has visited in the past 5 years. But Samuel Goldstein is no longer the 38-kilogram skeleton who left Buchenwald. 5 years of searching have transformed him into something different. An obsessive investigator, an amateur detective, a man who has turned his pain into scientific method. This is the third story of The Last Train Home, the story of how a promise became a profession, how hope became science, and how a man learned that sometimes the answers we seek are hidden in the places where we least expect to find them. And everything was about to change because of a casual conversation in a Parisian cafe. By January 1950, Samuel had developed a system. He was no longer the desperate survivor of 1945, wandering from city to city with a crumpled photograph. Now he was methodical. Every morning, Samuel studied correspondence from refugee organizations, the OSE, the Joint, the International Red Cross, the HIAS. He corresponded with dozens of organizations across Europe. Each week brought letters with lists of survivors, missing persons, identified orphaned children. Samuel had learned to read between the lines of these bureaucratic documents. When a letter said unidentified child, approximately 8 to 10 years old, found in Orléans, he calculated, born between 1940 and 1942, age compatible with Rebecca. When another mentioned girl with exceptional musical talent in Lyon Orphanage, his heart raced. He developed specific criteria, age compatible with Rebecca, born in 1937, any connection to music, children found or adopted between 1943 and 1945, especially in central southern France. His apartment in the Marais had become an operations center. An entire wall covered with maps of France, red pins marking cities visited, blue pins marking clues to investigate, yellow pins marking discarded leads. A second wall had photographs, dozens of children he had found and investigated over the years. Girls who had the right age, the right hair, sometimes even a superficial resemblance to Rebecca. But they were never her. Samuel had become an expert at recognizing false hopes. The girl in Toulouse who played violin like an angel, biological daughter of a local family, born in 1938. The girl in Montpellier with features that resembled Miriam, Polish orphan brought by nuns in 1944, named Anna Kowalski. Each disappointment teaches me something, Samuel wrote in his diary. Each false lead brings me closer to the true one. But there were 3 leads that Samuel couldn't completely discard. 3 cases that intrigued him and to which he constantly returned. First, a girl named Sophie at the Sainte-Marie orphanage in Nancy, who had arrived in March 1943 without documents and spoke some words in German. The age was right, but the nuns swore she was from Alsace. Second, a child adopted by the Mercier family in Dijon, who neighbors said had been very traumatized when she arrived and didn't speak for months. But when Samuel investigated in 1948, he discovered the girl was the daughter of Belgian refugees. And third, the pianist girl from Beaumont-sur-Loire. Beaumont-sur-Loire appeared in his notes constantly. Baker reacted strangely to photo. Pianist girl, exceptional talent, exact age. Father mentioned special archives. Small town, everyone knows each other, but everyone seems to keep secrets. Samuel had returned to the town twice since 1945, in 1947 and again in 1949. Each visit only intensified his suspicion that there was something there he wasn't seeing. On the second visit, in 1947, Samuel tried a different approach. Instead of asking direct questions about Jacob, he presented himself as a genealogist, researching families that had passed through the region during the war. Many families passed through here, the city hall official had said. But you know how these things are. War records sometimes get lost, sometimes are incomplete for security reasons. Pierre Dubois at the bakery once again seemed uncomfortable when Samuel appeared. "You've been here before," Pierre said, recognizing him. "Still looking for the same family?" On the third visit in 1949, Samuel arrived during harvest time. The town was celebrating, and he hoped the relaxed atmosphere would make people talk more. It was on this visit that he heard the pianist girl again, now 12 years old, playing in the church with even greater mastery. This time Samuel stayed after Mass and approached Father Francois Moreau directly. "Father, this girl, Marie, isn't it? Has she always lived here?" "Marie Dubois has been part of our community for many years," the priest replied carefully. "Why do you ask?" "Her musical talent is exceptional. Reminds me of my family. We were also musicians." Father Francois Moreau had studied Samuel for a long moment. "Monsieur, sometimes God places special people in special places for reasons only He understands. Marie is a blessing to our community." Samuel noticed there was something in the priest's tone, not exactly defensive, but protective. "I understand, Father. It's just that I lost my family in the war. Sometimes when I see musical talent like hers, I remember what we lost." "We all lost much in the war," the priest had replied gently. "But we must also be grateful for what was preserved." Between 1950 and 1952, Samuel followed dozens of new leads. Each began with hope and ended with disappointment, but also with knowledge. In February 1950, he received a letter from the Swiss Red Cross. Goldstein family registered at the border in March 1943, but there is no record of entry into Switzerland. Samuel immediately traveled to Geneva. At the Swiss border, Samuel discovered that several families with the name Goldstein had tried to cross in March 1943, but the records were confusing, incomplete. A retired guard vaguely remembered a family of musicians with small children who tried to cross but were prevented. What happened to them? Samuel asked, his heart beating fast. "They returned to France, I suppose. That's what happened when they couldn't pass. Or maybe they tried another route." Samuel spent 3 weeks in Switzerland, checking hospitals, orphanages, refugee records. Nothing. In May 1950, a lead took him to Marseille. A woman named Madame Rousseau swore she had known a Goldstein family from Paris who had hidden on her rural property during the summer of 1943. "The man played violin," she said. "The wife gave piano lessons to my granddaughters. 2 small girls, very well educated." Samuel showed the photograph. "Yes, them. Where are they now?" "They left in September 1943, said they would try to reach Spain." Samuel spent 2 months following the Spanish lead. He traveled to Barcelona, Madrid, checked records of Jewish refugees in Spain. He found several Goldstein families who had arrived from France, but none was Jacob's. That's when he discovered the truth about Madame Rousseau. She had developed senile dementia and was confusing different families that had passed through her property. The Goldstein family she described was actually a mixture of memories from 3 different families. These disappointments didn't discourage Samuel. On the contrary, they taught him. He developed techniques to verify witness reliability, to cross-reference information, to distinguish real memories from fabricated or confused ones. "The human mind is an imperfect archive," he wrote in his diary. "But when you put together many imperfect archives, sometimes a true pattern emerges." In 1951, Samuel received what seemed to be the most promising lead yet. A former member of the French resistance, Henri Dubois, cousin of Baker Pierre Dubois from Beaumont-sur-Loire, had survived the war and now lived in Paris. Samuel met Henri at a café near the Bastille. Henri was a man hardened by war, with visible scars on his face and hands that trembled slightly when he held his coffee cup. "Monsieur Dubois," Samuel said, showing the photograph, "your cousin Pierre said you worked with the resistance during the war. This family, do you know them?" Henri studied the photograph for a long time. Samuel saw something pass through the man's eyes, recognition, then something like pain. "Many families passed through our roots," Henri said carefully. "We didn't always know their real names. It was safer that way. But do you recognize this family?" Henri hesitated. "Maybe. It's hard to be sure after so much time." Henri told Samuel about the escape routes that operated between Paris and the Swiss border. He confirmed that Beaumont-sur-Loire was an important stopping point, where families waited for contacts for the next stage of the journey. "In March 1943, there were problems," Henri explained. "Some of our contacts were compromised. Families waiting in Beaumont-sur-Loire got stuck there for weeks, sometimes months. And what happened to these families? Some found alternative routes, others— Henri shook his head. Others were captured when they tried to leave. Samuel pressed for more details, but Henri seemed genuinely uncertain about the specific fate of Jacob's family. You should talk to my cousin Pierre, Henri finally suggested. He knew all the families that passed through the town. If anyone knows what happened to your relatives, it would be him. Samuel felt a familiar frustration. Once again, all leads led back to Beaumont-sur-Loire and to the baker who clearly knew more than he was saying. If you're enjoying this video, please click the like button so YouTube can share it with more people. And if you enjoy this type of video, please subscribe to our channel. October 1952. Samuel arrived in Beaumont-sur-Loire for the fourth time, but now with a different strategy. Instead of arriving as a desperate investigator, he presented himself as a writer, researching a book about resistance routes during the war. The town had changed in the 7 years since his first visit. More prosperous, more colorful, with clear signs that France was recovering from the war. Samuel reserved a room at the same pension where Jacob had stayed, now renovated and managed by Madame Leclerc. For 3 days he circulated through the town, casually talking with residents, building relationships before asking specific questions. At the Dubois bakery, Pierre now recognized him immediately. "The writer looking for war families," Pierre said when Samuel entered. "Still writing your book?" "Still researching," Samuel confirmed. "Your cousin Henri told me interesting things about the routes that passed through here." Samuel noticed that mentioning Henri made Pierre seem even more uncomfortable. "Henri talks too much sometimes," Pierre muttered, kneading bread with more force than necessary. "He said you knew all the families that passed through the town, that you had an excellent memory for faces." "People exaggerate." Pierre avoided looking directly at Samuel. "It was wartime. Everyone helped as they could, but we didn't keep lists of names." Samuel tried a different approach. "Pierre, I'm not trying to cause trouble for anyone. The war ended 7 years ago. I just want to understand what happened to my family." Pierre stopped kneading and looked directly at Samuel for the first time. "Your family?" "My brother. Jacob Goldstein, musician, wife Miriam, 2 small daughters. They passed through here in March 1943. The silence that followed was charged with tension. Pierre wiped his hands on his apron, then went to the window and looked at the street, as if checking whether anyone was listening. "Monsieur," Pierre finally said, "sometimes in war, people make difficult choices. Choices that seem right at the time but become complicated after the war ends." Samuel felt he was finally getting close to something real. "What kind of choices?" "Choices about protecting people, about giving them new chances at life." "Pierre, are you talking about my family?" Pierre returned behind the counter, creating physical distance between him and Samuel. "I can't talk about specific families, but I can say this. If a family found protection here during the war, that protection might have come with conditions, changes that were necessary to keep everyone safe." Samuel tried to process what he was hearing. "Conditions? What kind of conditions?" "New identities, new stories, new families." Samuel felt his heart race. "Pierre, are you saying my family might be alive here in Beaumont-sur-Loire?" "I'm not saying anything specific," Pierre replied quickly. "I'm just saying that sometimes to save a life you need to change that life." "The pianist girl," Samuel said suddenly. "Marie, how old was she when she came to your family?" Pierre's face paled. "Marie has always been part of our family. But when exactly did she become part of your family?" Pierre didn't answer. Instead, he took off his apron and hung it on the hook. "Monsieur, you seem like a good man, a man who lost much in the war. But sometimes searching for the past can destroy the present. Sometimes people who were saved need to continue being saved." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about a girl who has a family that loves her. A happy life, an identity that has protected her for 9 years. Samuel understood then what Pierre was trying to say without saying. "Marie," he whispered. "Marie is Rebecca." Pierre neither confirmed nor denied, but his eyes said everything. "If that were true," Pierre said carefully, "what would you do?" "A child who doesn't remember the past, who has a happy family, who considers herself French and Catholic, What would you do with such information? Samuel remained silent for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what he had discovered. I need to be sure, he finally said. I need to know for certain. And if you're certain, then what? I don't know. I only know I promised to find her. And if she's here, if she's alive and happy, maybe that's enough. Pierre studied Samuel's face for a long time. Come back tomorrow morning, before the town wakes up. October 15th, 1952. Samuel arrived at the bakery before dawn as Pierre had asked. The town was silent, wrapped in morning mist that made everything seem like a dream. Pierre waited for him with 2 cups of hot coffee and an expression that mixed resignation and fear. Before anything else, Pierre said, I need you to understand one thing. Everything we did out of love. Out of love for a child who came to us traumatized, scared, broken. Samuel nodded, his heart beating so loud he was sure Pierre could hear it. In March 1943, Pierre continued, we found a little girl hidden in a wardrobe. Her family had been taken during a German raid. She was 5 years old and terrified. Pierre told the whole story, how he and Claire decided to save Rebecca, how they changed her appearance, how Father Francois Moreau baptized her as Marie Dubois. She doesn't remember anything from her previous life, Pierre explained. The first months were difficult. She had nightmares, called for Mama and Papa, but gradually the painful memories disappeared. And the Star of David? She had a Star of David that belonged to her grandmother. Pierre hesitated. We still have it. Claire kept everything in a special box. Samuel felt tears in his eyes for the first time in years. Is she well? Is she happy? Very happy, Pierre said, and there was genuine pride in his voice. She's intelligent, talented, beloved by the whole town. She plays piano at church, helps Claire in the kitchen, plays with Jean like a real sister. And she doesn't suspect anything? Nothing. To her, we are her family. This is her home. This is her life. Samuel struggled with conflicting emotions, relief at finding Rebecca alive and well, gratitude to the Dubois for saving her, but also deep sadness for the life that he and she had lost. Can I see her? Samuel asked. You've already seen her. Several times. At church. But can I talk to her? Tell her about the family, about Jacob and Miriam? Pierre shook his head firmly. That would destroy her life. She wouldn't understand. To her, we are her real family. Samuel spent the next few minutes processing everything he had heard. After 9 years of searching, he had found Rebecca. She was alive, safe, loved. But she was no longer Rebecca. She was Marie, and Marie didn't know that Rebecca had ever existed. What do you think I should do? Samuel asked, honestly. I think you should be happy that she's well and move on. Let her live the life we built for her. And if one day she discovers on her own, if she questions her origin. Pierre considered the question carefully. If that happens, if she one day asks questions we can't answer, then maybe it's time to tell the truth. But not now. Not while she's happy as she is. Samuel understood the wisdom in that, but also felt the weight of carrying this secret. Pierre, can I make a request? Depends on the request. Can I write a letter to her? A letter you can keep and give to her if she ever asks questions about her origins. Pierre thought for a long time. A letter that I can accept, but with conditions. You can't mention where you live, how to find you. You can't create expectations of family reunion, just explain the truth about her origins in case she needs to know someday. Samuel nodded. It was a compromise he could accept. And there's one more thing, Pierre added. If you write this letter, you must accept that it might be the last connection you'll have with her. You can't keep coming here, watching her, disturbing her life. I understand. That morning, Samuel wrote the most difficult letter of his life. In 3 carefully chosen pages, he told Rebecca Marie about Jacob and Miriam, about Rachel, about the musical life they had lost, about how she had been saved by courageous people who loved her. He ended the letter with these words, if you are reading this, it means the time has come to know the truth. But I also want you to know that the family who raised you loves you as much as we loved you. You had 2 families who loved you, one that brought you into the world and another that saved and raised you. Both are real. Pierre kept Samuel's letter in the same wooden box where the Star of David, The piece of dress and the lock of hair already were. "If she asks," Pierre promised, "I'll give this to her." "But Samuel, you must accept that she might never ask. Maybe she'll be happy enough as Marie to never question her origin." "I accept," Samuel said. "I just want her to have the choice, if she ever needs to make that choice." Samuel spent 2 more days in Beaumont-sur-Loire discreetly observing Marie's daily life. He saw her helping Claire at the bakery, playing with other town children, playing piano at church during Sunday Mass. In every moment, he saw traces of Jacob, the way she tilted her head when concentrated on music. He saw traces of Miriam, the delicacy of her fingers on the keyboard. But he also saw something completely new, a happy French girl, fully integrated into her community. On the last night, Samuel had a final conversation with Pierre and Claire together. "You know I could legally try to seek custody of her," Samuel said. "I'm her uncle, her closest living blood relative." Claire paled, but Pierre remained calm. "You could, but would that be best for her?" "No," Samuel admitted. "It wouldn't be. You gave her something I could never give. A normal childhood without trauma, without war nightmares." "There's only one thing I need to ask," Samuel continued. "If she ever discovers the truth and wants to find me, will you help her?" "If that's what she wants," Claire said for the first time in the conversation, "then yes, we'll help her. And if she doesn't want to know anything about the past, then we'll respect that choice too," Pierre replied. Samuel left Beaumont-sur-Loire on the morning of October 18, 1952, knowing he would probably never return. He had found Rebecca, but discovered she no longer existed, only Marie existed. And Marie had a happy life that didn't include Rebecca Goldstein. On the train back to Paris, Samuel wrote in his diary, "Mission accomplished in a way I never imagined. Rebecca is alive, safe and loved. She's called Marie now and is happy. Jacob and Miriam would be proud of how she was saved, even if it meant she would never know they existed." During the next 2 years, 1953-1954, Samuel changed the focus of his search. Instead of looking for Rebecca, he dedicated himself to documenting and honoring the memory of Jacob, Miriam and Rachel. He wrote about their lives, about their music, about the love they shared, but he never completely stopped thinking about Marie. And he wondered, would she ever question her origin? Would she feel that something was missing in her story? In preparing to enter university, Marie needed certificates. When comparing civil registry with baptism records, she noticed inconsistencies. A professor suggested consulting OSE archives, which kept clues about children displaced during the war. In December 1954, Samuel Goldstein received a letter that would change everything. Not from a refugee organization, not from a war survivor, but from a young university student in Paris who was researching family genealogy. Monsieur Goldstein, the letter said, "I found your name in OSE archives as someone looking for the Goldstein family. I'm trying to trace my own origin and have some strange questions about my childhood." The letter was signed, Marie Dubois. Marie, now 17 years old, had begun asking questions. The questions Pierre and Claire had always feared. The questions that would lead to the most surprising discovery of all. Because Marie Dubois had grown up, but Rebecca Goldstein had never completely disappeared. And at 17, with all the curiosity of a young adult, she was ready to discover the truth about who she really was. This was the third story of The Last Train Home. The story of how finding someone doesn't necessarily mean reuniting with them, and how sometimes the greatest act of love is allowing people to remain lost. In the next video, we'll discover how Marie Dubois became a detective of her own life, and how a 17-year-old was about to shake 2 families and an entire town with her questions. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel and share our video to help us spread our stories.